Okay, let's start giving some instructions to this webinar. You are all muted, as you have seen. You would like to ask questions during the webinar, please type them in the question pane of your GoToWebinar app. I will be stopping from time to time to read the questions and take those that are relevant for the flow of the webinar in the accurate moments. If there are questions remaining that I will consider too specific or a bit out of scope of the webinar, I will leave them and then answer them personally with an email or address them later in any case. You will get, after the webinar, you will receive a survey. So you will receive an email and you can log in and do a very short survey to express how you perceive the webinar, how would you improve it. You can make suggestions, other kind of webinars you would like to see coming, and we can use those to increase our webinar portfolio as you need and as you wish. So take some minutes to do the survey if you can. That will be really, really helpful. The webinar is being recorded and we will share the recording. So we recorded also the webinar from yesterday. We will make available one of the two recordings in our YouTube webpage in the coming days. So you will receive a notification also when this is available. So you can go and have another look if you want to. I think that's it for the instructions, and I think we can get started. Welcome, everyone. My name is Emilia Moreno Ruiz. I will be hosting you today in this webinar that introduces you to the ecoinvent version 3.8. Let's get started. So I would like to start by introducing you very quickly to the ecoinvent Association in case you're not familiar with us and our work. I would then like to do a very short introduction to the ecoinvent database just to set ground and then get deeper into version 3.8, the content and the features that we have added for you in this latest release. So maybe let's start quickly with an introduction to ourselves. The ecoinvent Association is a not-for-profit association. It's dedicated, its main mission is to promote the availability of high-quality data for sustainability assessments worldwide. In its current legal structure, it was founded by 5 Swiss research institutes, the ETH Zurich, EPF Lausanne, PSI, EMPA, and Agroscope. We are today a team of 23 people. Most of us are LCA or LCI experts, but we also have a core IT team and the communications and the commercial team that takes care of commercializing our licenses, the licenses to our database, because that's the role that you know us most for. We are the publishers of the ecoinvent database. So we maintain, we enlarge, we manage, and we publish and sell the ecoinvent database. But we also do other kind of activities. We are also service and knowledge providers, and I will take the opportunity to introduce you a little bit more into these kind of activities. We would engage in projects that would cover the topic of interoperability, that would tackle a dataset creation, database handling, database analysis, distribution. So projects tackling those kind of topics or doing capacity building around those topics. So we will engage in these kind of projects, and typically we would work with others for interoperability. We are members of the GLAD network, and we were leaders of the GLAD EF mapping project that mapped together different flow lists from different databases in order to facilitate this conversion and this interoperability between formats and databases. We are members of advisory board and working groups in the Environmental Footprint Data Initiative of the European Commission, the PEF initiative. And of course, we also are members of the advisory board of different LCA databases, or have been. We were the coordinators of the National LCA Database Roadmap project funded by UNEP. And we also participate in different research and development projects. I name here a few: Orientin, Oasis, Refine, Wiser, all of them tackling the issue of expanding formats, making formats or different perspectives map to each other. So how do we tackle the issue of sustainability and measure environmental, economic, and social data, for example? We also function as data providers for others. Typically, we are data providers for the PEF initiative, both in the pilot and in the transition phase. In the pilot phase, we were in charge of all the data concerning the chemical sector. And in the transition phase, we updated the data for the chemical sector, but we also, together with a large consortium, provided and are providing data for chemicals and plastics, agri-food, renewables, and textiles. When it comes to the ecoinvent database, that you are maybe very familiar with, but in case you are a newcomer, just to as I said before, set the ground. The ecoinvent database is a global library of human activities that includes thousands of processes or activities that cover all the steps through the value chain and through different industrial sectors. It is updated yearly, and data provider, so the data that is feeding the content and feeding this database come from different sectors or from very different actors in the knowledge landscape. So data would come from industry or from industry associations. Data would come from research institutions or universities, or data would come through partnerships with national initiatives, so national databases. Before getting published in the database, the data goes through an extensive internal review for compliancy and consistency with the ecoinvent methodology and ecoinvent requirements. And it also goes through an external review, which is a thorough external review done by a competent editor, member of our editorial board. Those are experts, recognized experts in the different fields, in the different sectors that the database covers. And what are those sectors? The database covers all kinds of human activities, as you can see in the slide, from crop production and other agricultural processes and services to energy production, resource extraction, metal mining, metal forming, and of course transport, chemical production, construction materials, and all sorts of end-of-life processes. I will talk today about the latest version of the database, as you can see also in the top section of the slide. That was released in 2021. It's a version 3.8. It contains around 18,000 activities and around 4,000 products, and it covers all regions in the world. So let's have some a general picture of the version 3.8 before diving into the details. Version 3.8 was released to the public on the 21st of September of 2021. It contains, compared to 3.7.1, 360 new activities and updates 700 activities, and it adds 50 new products to the existing database. The version 3.8 will update several sectors, and we will look into that in the next slides. It will update parts of the metal sector, an overhaul of the electronics sector and batteries, update electricity mixes, will add processes to the forestry sector and also agricultural sector. The version 3.8 also adds new methods to our calculated scores. We calculate now our scores also with EF 3.0 and EF for EN 15804, and as well as with the newest CML version 4.8. version 3.8 also updates existing methods that were already present in our calculations, such as EF 2.0 or IPCC 2013. The version 3.8 has a big focus on what's the user experience and what we call comfort feature, how you as users experienced comfortable use of the database. So in that regard, the version 3.8 adds a new system model dedicated to EPD practitioners. It includes what we call an Excel help for practitioners that use the GHG protocol. This Excel help will help them calculate scopes 2 and 3 under the GHG protocol. And it adds, or the version 3.8 was released together with a rebranding, a new website, a new web page, and that contains dedicated new sections, including sectorial dedicated pages, so pages dedicated to the different sectors covered by the database. And let's start diving a bit into the content that has been added to the database with this version 3.8. And I would like to start with the improvements that were made to the regional coverage, to the coverage of the Brazilian region. And that has been done in the framework of a common project. It's called the Cornerstone Project that was set up between Rede ACV, that's the Brazilian Business Network for LCA, and the ecoinvent Association, to improve the availability and the access to background data that represented key supply chains for Brazil for practitioners, of course in Brazil, but then also anywhere in the world. So the data in version 3.8 will cover updates and additions to the extraction, the import and distribution of crude petroleum oil and natural gas. It will cover it covers the production of biodiesel all the way to the esterification of fatty acid methyl ester, and the distribution of diesel for transport. And it will also update and add data concerning road freight transport by lorry. And it means in that case that the transport is now reflecting this blend, this mandatory blending of road diesel that it's mandatory in Brazil, where diesel has to be blended with biodiesel, increasing progressively the share of biofuel in the mix. Also, the data has been updated then to better reflect the country-specific supply of crude petroleum oil to the petroleum refinery operation existing already in Brazil. So proper linking of the existing Brazilian refinery to the added extraction data has been ensured. As I mentioned before, the work was done in collaboration or in the framework of this partnership with Rede ACV, and a lot of the creation and submission of the data was taken by ACV Brazil. As is now customary, to go with every release, we update our electricity mixes. So what did we update for this release? The version 3.8 contains updated attributional electricity markets for most countries in the world, with a reference year of 2018. In the case of US, Canada, and Switzerland, the reference year is 2019. There is also an update of the transformation losses. The transformation losses both from high to medium voltage and from medium to low voltage have been updated to values representative for the year 2018 as well, and using data from the International Energy Agency. This is work that has been done in a collaboration with ETH Zurich and the Paul Scherrer Institute, so PSI. The version 3.8 also adds 2 new technologies for energy storage, so compressed air energy storage and adiabatic compressed energy storage, adding new technologies and new activities to this sector. I would like now to jump to the electronic sector, as a sector that has been heavily remodeled and tackled for the version 3.8. So for this version, new datasets on consumer electronics devices have been added to the database. This is data based on the latest literature data reviewed by long data industrial experts that are part of our editorial board. So the database contains now a data sets for the production, but also for the end of life of smartphone, tablet, and updated data for a laptop. To support the addition of these devices and to complete the value chain for those mobile devices, a new printed wiring board and a new liquid crystal display or datasets covering the manufacture and end of life of those have also been added to the database. There has been also work to adjust the components. So the components in the corresponding value chains and supply chains of the different devices have been adjusted as needed. That means that they have been adjusted and corrected in order to allow a more accurate modeling of the final devices. So the different inputs of metals have been adjusted in the different components, or further corrections in the data sets have been performed in order to allow a more accurate modeling of the devices. There are future updates that are coming in the upcoming versions, 3.9 and eventually also 3.10. So the sector is in development and under update, and then more will come in the future. Related to that, we have updated and added new battery types to the database. With ecoinvent version 3.8, we have included new datasets for 3 types of lithium-ion batteries and their production. The regional coverage of the data is China, so the manufacturing country is China, and they concern the NCA battery and NMC 111 and NMC 811, and it's what has been included in the database is the full supply chain. So the full supply chain has been added new for each battery type, as you can see in the graph that it's sitting on the slide. And the different processes cover all individual battery components. So the cathode, the anode, high and low voltage systems, the cells, and battery management systems. And so each of those are split, and each is represented as an individual data set. The whole modeling of the batteries also includes data for the various chemicals that are needed for the manufacturing, such as cobalt sulfate or disodium disulfide or vinyl carbonate and others for the 3 battery types. The datasets were created by the Swiss Federal Laboratories for Material Science and Technology, that's EMPA. And I would like to point out that if you are interested in using these datasets, you should be aware of a known issue. We have identified the different chemicals that are needed for the manufacturing and the final assembly of the battery. There is a problem in the connection of the chemicals, and not all chemicals are properly connected to the proper value chain, and that can create a small distortion in results. So I invite you to go and check the known issues page for the version 3.8 and understand. We have prepared a full Excel file that will help you understand and correct that for yourself. I will also point to you where the known issues are, so you should find them easily. In addition to these lithium-ion batteries, we have added a new dataset concerning or modeling the manufacturing of a valve-regulated stationary rechargeable lead-acid battery. So that's included now in the new version 3.8. The inventory is based on a specific battery model produced in the US, and the data has been created and submitted by the University of Pforzheim. And now, yes, we can jump into the metal sector. So there are several updates and adjustments that have been done on the metal sector. The most important one, or the first I would like to highlight, is the update and the additions we have done around critical and scarce metals. There is now a new data available for the production of beryllium, ferroniobium, and scandium oxide produced from rare earth tailings. And there is also available updated data for the production of ferrochromium, lithium carbonate, strontium sulfate, tantalum, titanium, and for mining of heavy mineral sands. This data was provided in the framework of a Swiss Federal Office for the Environment funded project, so a BAFU funded project, and it was provided by EMPA to the ecoinvent database. The second update I would like to highlight concerns iron and steel supply chains. So the production volumes of all the products in the iron and steel supply chain have been adjusted for most activities and geographies. So that means that the relative contribution of those products to final scores might change in the different projects you might have. So this is something it's interesting for you as users to be aware of. And finally, there are changes that have been made to the datasets modeling the smelting of copper concentrate. So smelting of copper concentrate sulfide ore, that has been changed for all geographies existing. So there have been updates made in order to have more region-specific values for the exchange amounts in these datasets. I take 1 minute or 50 seconds to read the questions, and if I understand well, they concern the GHG protocol calculation help, so I will address them at the moment where I will be covering that with the slides as well. So let's stay focused on the content additions. We have added also new activities related to bamboo forestry and also to the production of intermediate bamboo construction materials. So more semi-industrialized construction materials from bamboo. So the value chain will start with the forestry of bamboo and the production of the bamboo culms. And it will end with the production of bamboo derived products. So as I said, with not a high level of industrialization, so such as bamboo pole, flattened bamboo, and woven bamboo mat. These datasets were developed by ETH and with the support of the International Organization for Bamboo and Rattan in Bar, and they were submitted to us through by ETH. This data covers, as you can see in the map in the slide, the main producers in the world. So Brazil and Colombia and China and Philippines. And there is more that will come in version 3.9. So we will be able to picture also in the database the more industrialized bamboo derived products such as glued laminated bamboo and others. In the ecoinvent version 3.8, we continued with our efforts to update data in the chemical sector while also strengthening our collaboration with the industry. So in that regard, we updated the data for styrene production. With the support of Plastics Europe, we adjusted the emissions of benzene to both water and air to adjust them to the state of the art in the industry today. And we have, through a collaboration with Europur, so the European Association of Flexible Polyurethane Foam Blocks Manufacturers, we have added new data for polyurethane foam to the database, covering the MDI-based polyurethane and TDI-based polyurethane, high and low density, and also adding new manufacturing data and corresponding markets to polyurethane TDI based as a flame retardant. So that means that we have now two distinct products covering flexible foam, polyurethane flexible foam. One is flame retardant and the other is not. And I have a question that asks about recycled metals or recycled plastics. So we have not added more data on recycling metals or plastics for the version 3.8. So there are several metals in the database that have a recycling process and a virgin process. So a process that produces virgin material and another one that will produce recycled material. And in the case of plastics, we also have different activities that cover the recycling of PET, PE, etc. But we have not added more in the version 3.8. I would like to mention now small addition we have made to the construction sector, small eventually for the global database, but key to keep on building properly relevant regional supply mixes. So in that sense, we have added more regional specificity to the different concrete, different types of concrete that are available to the Austrian market, which, as you know, for all construction materials, it's a very locally traded product. So for those kind of materials, it's key to have regional relevant manufacturers and regional representative manufacturers and markets. So we have added, as I was saying, the new concrete production datasets and the corresponding market mixes for Austria, covering the different concrete mixes with different strengths and exposure classes as listed here in the slide. So they will be the 25 megapascals and exposure class XC12 and 30 megapascals and the exposure classes XC3 and then XC3, XD2 and XF1, XA1. The update was done in collaboration with TU Grass. And in a similar line, we have also added new data to better cover agricultural services and crop production activities in Canada. So we have added activities covering the production of lentils and peas, and at the same time recontextualizing and bringing to the Canadian reality and modeling needs different agricultural services. This was done in collaboration with the University of British Columbia and the Food Systems PRISM Laboratory. I would like to close the content section of this webinar mentioning a correction we have done related to air transport. So this would affect the air freight transport datasets, all hauls, and both dedicated freight and belly freight. So in the versions 3.6 and 3.7.1, for all of those datasets, the consumption of kerosene and the corresponding emissions were too low. They were underestimated. We have corrected that now in collaboration with the original data provider, which is Infras. So the correction would lead to significant changes in the LCIA scores for air freight transport data. in the database, this is relevant for only a handful of products, because in the ecoinvent database, there are only 42 activities that require air transport as a direct input, and only for few of those, the update of transport, this correction has a relevant impact. So this correction in the database is particularly relevant for the markets of fruits and vegetables, and you have here the ones that are affected: green and white asparagus, papaya, pineapple, and strawberry. In your different projects, that can be a different story. So we have prepared for you a file that you can download from the ecoquery. As you know, that's the portal that gives access to the ecoinvent database in the ecoinvent website. So there you can go in ecoquery and you will find a file that compares the different amounts, exchange amounts in the different versions, together with also the results in the different versions, one compared to the other. There's also a whole chapter dedicated to explaining the correction and analyzing the results or the effects in the change report for version 3.8. If you need more information and details, and if you're still in doubt, please come and contact us. Okay, and I would like to now mention, related still to the content update, and maybe to wrap up and move to the what we call the user experience and comfort features. I would like to explain you the work we have been doing on related to biogenic carbon resource correction. So, as you know, when the data sets with multiple products are allocated in the attributional system models using price, which this is the most frequently used allocation key in the database. So when products are allocated using price, this can lead to a discrepancy between the biogenic carbon content of a product and the amount of the carbon resource that will be allocated to it based on the life cycle inventory and based on the allocation key. This is especially relevant, of course, when the products that are being allocated one to another have large differences in price. And then this is leading to an allocation of most of the impacts to the more valuable product. And then the discrepancy in the carbon content can be very obvious. So what have we been doing? We started by reviewing and fixing all the biogenic carbon balances in the wood and paper sector at the undefined level. As you know, in the undefined database, we have all the inventories as multi-output and allocated data. So there we reviewed and we fixed all the biogenic carbon balances, adjusting properties, adjusting flows, and adjusting the balances. This is the basis now to allow any kind of resource correction for biogenic carbon. So after that, we compared the balance of non-fossil of biogenic carbon before and after allocation. So with this comparison of the undefined and the allocated data set, we determined how large or what was the imbalance in biogenic carbon that has been introduced by the allocation. And this imbalance was subsequently corrected by introducing a new exchange called carbon dioxide non-fossil resource correction in the dataset, which is then used and taken into account by those methods that have a characterization factor for biogenic carbon that is different than 0. Yes, and where can you find more information? Where can you look again at, okay, content details, where do I read this again? Here, if you come to our website, you will have a dedicated page to version 3.8. I have tried to copy you the specific web page. You will find all the documentation relative to it. So what's the content in short, and also what's the content in very deep detail in the change report. You will also find other relevant files there, like the correspondence file, which will map you one version to the previous one, so 3.8 to 3.7.1. And you will also find a database overview file. I will give you more details about this one. It's a file that summarizes all the content of the database, activities, products, methods, everything. I will give details later. And also the known issues, as I mentioned before, that's an important page. All issues that we identify are then listed and explained in this section. Okay, let's jump into the comfort features, into how we have worked to improve the user experience, the experience you have when working with the database. So for that, we have worked at different levels, and we have worked, for example, to make available for you better and more documentation. And that covers product information. We have worked to improve and to give you information per product. We have worked to improve information around markets and around exchanges, working on ensuring the availability of CAS numbers and correctness of namings at the level of exchanges. We have also worked at the level of the website, adding a sectorial dedicated web page to the website. But we also made an effort to facilitate the diving in the database. So we have prepared for that, we have prepared tools that will facilitate how you search the content of the database. That's the database overview file, and how you approach to that content. We have redesigned the PDF data-specific reports, so they are more convenient for your use and they are more useful for you. And we have also worked to power the use of the database to make it usable together with even more standards. So for that, we have added a new system model for the comfort of EPD practitioners, as I mentioned before, and we have also added this calculation help to work under the GHG protocol. So what are the features that we have added related to the improvement of definitions and documentation? So as I said, we have added product information. Every product and service included now in the database integrates a description that is supporting you in identifying what is this product and when to use it. So it will give physical properties or characteristics of a product. It will also give guidance on how the product can be used in different supply chains or modeling cases. So if the product is a service, for example, it will explain how it has to be used in the downstream consuming activities by giving relevant information, for example, lifetime or do I need to take also an input together with this service, or can I use this service as a standalone because it contains also the resources it needs to function? This kind of information that it's often coming to us as questions. We have also added systematically CAS numbers in all intermediate or corrected sometimes in all intermediate and elementary exchanges. That meant more than 1,000 CAS numbers corrected or updated overall in the database. So this is also helpful when it comes to identify, is this the product I need, is this not? And we have also worked in the documentation of the market. So there is documentation work that has been done in order to improve the meta information in all the market activities in the database. The idea is to make the description, what is the market, how can I use it, what's the function of the market, clearer for the users, and in then differentiating between the type of product that it's supplied by this market. So there is a short descriptive text that has been added to the general comment, defining, as I say, use, scope, and function, but then specific description explaining what does it mean that market is supplying a regular product or it's supplying a waste. What does it mean being a treatment mix versus being a regular product mix? So all this information should help you navigating and deciding what activity in the case of the market or what product to use in the case of the product information. I mentioned before with the new version 3.8, we also released a new rebranded website, and I, of course, invite you to explore it, but also you can sign in if you wish to an upcoming webinar, I believe is next month, that will guide you through the use of the web page and the different new sections it has, and also the different documents and where to find them and how to use them. So I really invite you to sign in if you have already not done it. In this website, we have added a whole new part of the website that is related to sectorial information. So each sector will be covered. So you can see all the sectors are listed, and then you can jump into each sector, and each sector is covered with a dedicated page and eventually also sub-pages. So the sectorial page will in the end contain information that it's related general to the sector, also to the specific subsector or domains of the sector, and it will also group all the documentation, all the documents that relate to this sector will be cited in a like a bibliographical list there, so you can jump from one to another and have this overview very fast. And you will also find a list of all the relevant stakeholders for the sector for ecoinvent, so the data providers on the editors or the editors, allowing you to have a full picture of who has been contributing and how to the shaping of this sector. I also mentioned we gave a new look to the PDF report. So we try to structure them more clearly, and we try to show information in a more useful way for you. So for example, we have added now maps that would highlight the geography that it's represented in the dataset. And this is, of course, very relevant in the case of rest of the world, this geography that can cover a different group of regions depending on the technology. You will now see this very visually, very fast with a map. We have, of course, maintained all the meta information, so the general description and the general commentary, and then the technology field. All this is maintained. Of course, we also have maintained the same selection of information shown for the flows. This stays the same. We also display now in the PDFs that concerned datasets from the attributional system models. We also display the information that covers the allocation factors that have been used to partition the datasets among the different products. As you know, this information was only accessible in EcoQuery until now. Now you can find it also in the PDF, so it should be faster to access and to use for you. I mentioned that database overview file before. This is a file that the aim is to facilitate the search of activities, products, but also methods, indicators, geographies in the ecoinvent database. So the database will contain, the file contains information or different tabs, and with the different tabs, it will cover the undefined database and each of the system models. Each dataset, each activity has been assigned to one or more sectors, depending on, of course, the needs of it, but that helps also filter for datasets that can belong to different sectors. If you're looking for a fertilizer, maybe with your perspective, you would select data concerning the agricultural sector. Maybe you would select data contained in the chemical sector, and with both possibilities, you will find fertilizers. And we have applied for activities different sector classifications in this file. So we have used what we call the ecoinvent classification. So ecoinvent data distributed as in the ecoinvent sectors, but also we have used the ISIC classification. So this classification that we have been always using, the UN classification for activities, so ISIC. We use it at two levels, at a very detailed level and at the level of the generic sections, to try to power also the search, to make more generic or more specific searches. In the case of products that are also listed and can be, of course, also searched, we offer the CPC classification system. That is the UN system for the classification of products. This database overview covers also all the geographies that are used in the ecoinvent database, so you will find there the classification and also the geographical overlap, so that will allow you to understand what each geography is covering, especially important in the case of regions that can cover specific countries or not. That's always interesting to check. And the file also covers a list with all LCIM methods that we are using to calculate our scores, containing information on the version of the method and the original source that has been used to map to the characterization factors and the indicators provided under the method. There are, I mentioned two system models and or calculation helps that we have added. Let's start with the one that we have added to facilitate the work of EPD practitioners or of practitioners that work a lot with EPDs. It's called allocation. It's a new system model. It's called allocation cutoff EN 15804. This is a system model that it's fully compliant with ISO 14025, ISO 21930, and the EN 15804, including the A2 addendum of 2019. This system model aims at facilitating the EPD practitioners' work. So it complies with all the standards, and it harmonizes, facilitates the calculation of the indicators of the standards. So it will provide all life cycle inventory indicators or LCI indicators required by the standards, and it also adheres to the end of waste criteria set by the European Commission. We have already broadcasted a webinar concerning the modeling choices, assumptions, calculations, everything related to this system model. You can find the recordings accessible in our YouTube webpage. I indicate here a link in case you want to go and check that. And I take now a question that it's coming. No, we don't represent module D. So the question is module D represented by this system model? No, but we are working on to calculating and offering proper values for the module D in the future. And with version 3.8, we have also published the possibility or an Excel file that allows you to calculate emissions from electricity according to scope 2 and 3 for the GHG protocol. So this Excel file gives separated scope 2 and 3 emission factors for electricity producing activities and the electricity markets, so available, as I said, in this spreadsheet. And these emission factors are representative for the end consumers of electricity, and they will refer to the location-based reporting method. So that means that they represent grid average emission factors. And on top of this, and now I'm going back to the question pane, and I will go back and read Yeah, exactly. So on answering to some of the questions that were asked in the very beginning, sorry, the answer might only come now, but um, on top of that, in the spreadsheet, there's also more information to be found. You will also find desegregated emissions, so then given as a kilograms per kilowatt of electricity, and emission factors for individual greenhouse gases or groups of greenhouse gases. So that's answering a question that was asked before. Here again, if you're interested in the GHG protocol and the work we are doing there, please sign in for our upcoming webinar. I think it's coming in March. And in any case, I have marked here the link to our calendar. So please sign in and join us in this webinar that will also cover how is electricity modeled, the electricity sector modeled in the database in general. So with this, I would like to thank you for your attention and for being there. We still have some minutes, so we can take more questions. And yeah, more related to the GHG. Yeah, we are covering electricity for now. Only electricity. We are aiming at developing more, and in the upcoming versions, we will be able to release more calculation helps. And you can download as the question is where to find the file, you can log into the ecoquery, so this dedicated portal, to have access to the ecoinvent database, and go in the files section, and you can download the spreadsheet where you can find all the, as I say, emission values and the calculation factors. The next version is coming when? That's a question. So it will come in summer 2022. It will be called version 3.9. And yes, in September 2022. So I don't see more questions coming. So maybe it's time to say goodbye and enjoy your weekend. For those that, like me, are at the end of the Friday, or have a nice Friday for those that might be on another time zone. And in any case, thank you very much for being there with me in this webinar, and goodbye.